What's happening, folks? We're back for a music video for an epic acid-techno tune. Now, the original version of One Night in Hackney by Dynamo, which if you didn't know is Chris Liberator along with Henry Cullen, aka Dave the Drummer, shout out to both of them. If you didn't know, that track is the biggest selling acid techno track ever, like as far as I know. Again, this is a bit like imprecise information, but I know at least in the world of Stay Up Forever and like London acid techno, that tune sold like crazy. And you know, it's been repressed a few times, it's been remixed a number of times, and it's just an all-time classic. And yet I'll let you in on a secret. The original version, it's good, it's fine. I think Dynamo City have done better tracks. I think Chris and Henry as Dave the Drummer, I think they've done better tunes. So I like it, and I absolutely respect its massive legacy. And in some ways, you know, I think the success of that record allowed Stay Up Forever to continue putting out vinyl and, you know, putting out sub-labels and doing things that they might not have otherwise been able to do, like in terms of like, you know, pure financial logistics. So in that regard, you know, I'm very thankful for that track. And if you didn't know further, it's sort of an homage slash spoof of One Night in New York City by the Horrorist. And if you don't know who the Horrorist is, I mean, I don't really know who he is all that much, but he has made some hardcore tracks back in the 90s, and he got his original 15 minutes of fame because he was on the tour bus with Depeche Mode for the 101 tour, and I've done a watch along for the 101 documentary, and he was one of the like 7 or 8 kids that were chosen, like, you know, some contest to go along with Depeche Mode on their tour that was again made into the 101 documentary. So yeah, I now kind of know what he looks like, and you know what he was like way back when he was a teenager and he was a fan of, you know, like UK synth pop and so on. Nevertheless, again, it's sort of an homage to that tune, although, you know, very different sonically. Anyway, the original came out One Night in Hackney, and like I said, it's good, it's fine. It, you know, didn't really stand out to me all that much. Then there was a round of remixes, like 2 different remixes they made a few years later. Again, all right, nothing wrong with them, pretty cool. And then like a decade after that, I think like mid 2010s, like 2016, something like that, Chris Liberator and longtime collaborator and recent album producer, along with Chris, Sterling Moss, they did a remix of it that to me took the track to the level that everyone had always talked about the original in. So I love this remix by Chris and Sterling, and to my mind it's the best version of the tune, and I love it the way a lot of people love the original. Now we're going to watch here what's called the Montreal Warehouse video, and I don't know who made this, but it really does kind of like put a visual to all the aspects of the song. So yeah, if you haven't heard this, or if you don't know, you know, the original One Night in New York City, and if you've never heard One Night in Hackney, this track has vocals in it that describe, let's say, a very big night out in the London acid techno warehouse scene. So let's give it a watch. This is Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss's remix of One Night in Hackney by Dynamo City. I've talked about it in some of my reaction videos. Like back in the 90s, one of the first things that really like struck me about going to techno parties, and you get excited, you're going with your friends, and back in the day there were parties where like you go to a checkpoint, you get directions to another checkpoint, and it was sort of a journey to get to the actual party. And they were, again, like in some places, they didn't have the permits, so it was a bit like they made you kind of work for it to get to it, just to make sure, to kind of like lessen the chance that the party would get broken up and so on. But yeah, when you'd finally get near the party and you're walking toward the warehouse, or if it's an outdoor party, you're kind of like, walking from wherever you're parking the cars, like down or up a hill, like across a wooded area or whatever. And you could hear this like muffled boom getting louder and louder. It was just this like adrenaline rush. So yeah, hearing the boom of the sound system as you get closer to the party, it makes me very nostalgic.
As we turned the corner, we saw some strange people hanging around. One night in Hackney. One night in Hackney. One night in Hackney. And then they offered me a line. What was that? Ketamine. So I took it. And then I took some cocaine. And then some speed. And then some acid. And then I drank 15 cans of 15 cans of Stella. 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 And I stayed until Monday night.
Again, shout out to Stay Up Forever. As much as any other record label in the world, kind of the soundtrack to the majority of my life. It's, again, I like acid-techno from a lot of different labels, including acid-techno from like outside the London scene, but more than any other label, the Stay Up Forever label has kind of defined a huge part of my musical life. So big shout out to Chris, to Aaron, to Julian, who, I don't know. Aaron I've talked to a bit, Chris I've talked to a lot in the last few years. But yeah, they are legendary, and their label continues to be the foremost champion of the underground acid sound.
One night in Hackney. One night in Hackney. One night in Hackney.
Shout out to DJ Indica, and I think now that I see that, I swear there's a Stay Up Forever remix vinyl with Indica and someone else doing a remix. I forget what track they remix, but yeah, I think he's like a remix occasional producer in the acid scene. So shout out to him as well. Yeah, it's like Indica and Popeye or something. It's a remix of, God, what track is that they remix? But I definitely have that. And so, yeah, I guess he's like, part of the Canadian techno scene.
Let's do 15 cans of Stella together. Ready? 15 cans of Stella. And I stayed until Monday night.
Absolute banger. Hey, who's that guy? Oh, look, it's me reacting to the tune we just listened to. Back in the days of my 1970s Sandstorm, the blurriness. Also, shout out to the Subhumans. But yeah, that face is the face that I make right now. I can't do it. I look so youthful there. I'm so envious of me when I was like 42 years old, all those many years ago. Nevertheless, yeah, it's an absolute banger. And as I said, I respect the original. I think it's an entirely decent tune, but to me, this remix is the one that I was always waiting for without knowing it. And so when I heard this, which I think officially it's like the Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss Take This Pill remix. I think that's officially what it's known as on the vinyl. But yeah, big shout out to Chris, big shout out to Henry, big shout out to the Stay It Forever label and to the remix sub-label and all those who have been part of the acid scene, including those who may not have listened to acid techno before, but who have come to it through my YouTube endeavors and my SoundCloud endeavors and so on. You are all appreciated, and you are all part of the scene as well. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.